Hi there. This time I'm reading this book. It's Noam Chomsky, Masters of Mankind. Some of the essays that Chomsky has written. And one of the learnings from this is I'm reading the first one. It's called Knowledge and Power. I think one of the learnings from this is about the colonial attitude of U.S. And I was just thinking about it here. If you look back to the independence and World War II, I think the world we are living in is mostly a product of imagination of FDR, and that was this was the thing I've sort of heard in another podcast about FDR's letters during the World War, and I think this is this whole world that has come out because the way decolonization took place and the way all the countries got independence after the World War is the next step as envisaged by FDR. However, there were two things that went fundamentally against this, and that is FDR died in between before the war was over, and the second person who was very critical to this was John Maynard Keynes, and he also died unfortunately at the time of just after the war actually. The uh, the end result is that John Maynard Keynes was negotiating um, on behalf of US, not US, but he was there, but not as a part of the UK delegation during the First World War Treaty of Versailles, and his uh, his view was that the treaty had failed to give a proper sort of closure to the World War One, and then it would result in another war. He was absolutely right on that. Uh, so when Keynes came back at the end of the World War Two, he his suggestions of you know a World Bank and a monetary system, sort of a sort of a template of Bretton Woods, which was given by him, has largely shaped the world that we live in, and FDR's political ideology and Keynes' economic ideology have shaped our world, post-war world. However, there were two very distinct problems. One is after FDR passed away, the political establishment in America and the economic establishment in America sort of nurtured the goals of an um, imperialistic approach or a view of the rest of the world. And Chomsky talks about that, sort of an imperialist, a sort of reformist domestic and imperialistic overseas kind of an approach for American policy. This this approach is actually evident in Philippines. It's evident in development of Japan and other economies, and it continues to this date, where U.S. feels it's sort of pushes its imperialistic ideas in trade deals, not so much militarily, but the legacy of the military imperialism or the military power continues to this date. So it ends up being interested in many of the geopolitical uh, issues than it's necessary. Uh, I mean, I particularly am discounting the US role in military terms because of one primary factor, that after World War II, US did emerge as a police, world policeman. So with Union tried to counter that, and it was the World War. That was the Cold War. But incidentally, everywhere, if you look at it, it was U.S. As the global policeman, and the role uh, came to it because of the moral high ground that US got from FDR's view of the world. So US was instrumental in pushing many of the economies into its freedom, though FDR couldn't sort of take credit for it because he never published anything, and the American presidents later did not emphasize enough, probably for lack of understanding. I don't know what went on, but it clearly gave America some sort of a moral high ground, and people looked up to Americans to police the world order, which is not bad. But Americans thereafter, because of this conflict between the role of a policeman and the role of an imperialist on the trade side, this conflict got America into trouble. And I think that the instances of this trouble you can see in many places, in many geographies, including the Middle East. And I think those are the critical uh, sort of strategies which America should not be doing. Uh, and FDR's America would have been a global police force, no doubt. But I don't think if you marry FDR's political views with Keynes' economic views, you would have had an imperialistic tendency in trade. You would have much fairer trade, much open trade, and all this, pushing on the trade front would not have happened. A more balanced outcome would have been possible. So I think uh, just like the way we reap the benefits of great personalities here, probably two great personalities, just as luck would have it, they sort of passed away at the wrong time, and we are reaping the consequences of that. So I think that's one of the takeaways that I have from this book. So let's see how it goes and how I'm able to, what Chomsky says on other issues. This is my first Chomsky book, by the way. So he writes always very complicated and a little. The writers he quotes and the writers who he reads seem to be a little, too esoteric for me. Let's see how it goes.